Welcome, everyone, to our Legal Tuesdays with Kelly. Today, we have a very interesting topic that we want to discuss with you, especially in 2021. Everyone who wants to start a business, we want to bring you applicable, very practical um, legal aspects on where are the do's and don'ts, the eliminating the blind spots on how to start your own company. And today we're going to focus primarily on incorporating versus an LLC, talking about the process, the pros and cons of each, when you can do one versus the other, what best works for you, and then also what type of resources are available to kind of get you started and give you additional information and knowledge. Of course, Kelly is always available to answer questions, and we'll be able to provide that information through the segment or throughout the segment. But first, thank you, Kelly. Welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time to answer this important legal questions for the audience. But before we get started, I would like for you, if you could just please give us the disclaimer that we normally do.
Absolutely, Joe. Fantastic to be on the show with you once again. Our usual disclaimer is that the information that I'm providing to your listeners does not create an attorney-client relationship. It's just for general purposes only, and this information should not be relied on for or a substitute for legal advice. And if anyone is interested in obtaining more information, I'm always available.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And yes, this we want to bring this as a informational purposes only. This is our opinions as a business consultant, and this is just our opinions. But definitely, if someone wants to move forward and implement any of the components or topics that we discuss, they definitely should have a contact with you via phone or however you decide to do it, and that'll be awesome. And by the way, to the audience, I'm not pitching this just because Kelly's here, but I think I found Kelly to be the most amazing attorney. She's very practical, and she will answer the questions without any dancing around, and that saves you a lot of time and money when you come into the legal aspects of it. I think on the legal side of things, legality is very important because as in business owners, I mean, as you know, we run the nonprofit organization as the Veterans Foundation, the Veterans Chamber. I run my own business on the personal side. And what I found to be the most critical part is things that I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And I find it to be so many blind spots. So I definitely rely on people, basically I rely on you to kind of help me identify those blind spots and reduce the risk of putting myself out there and creating liability for me or for the organizations that I work or serve. But what I would like to get started with is how do we get started with an entity? Let's start with that.
Okay. There are multiple different types of entities, Joe, and I wish we had 3 days for this show, right? but that means that we're going to keep coming back and giving the audience more information, valuable
Absolutely.
information, right? So today I just want to touch upon the two that are most commonly used entities. And I don't mean a sole proprietor. A sole proprietorship is not an entity. It's just an individual doing business as themselves because they haven't registered their business with the state where they're living. So that's not an entity. The two most common entities that are that people might be familiar with, one is the corporation, and the other one is an LLC, also known as the limited liability company. There seems to be a lot of confusion, Joe, between the two, right? So if I just weed through that confusion and basically tell the audience, your listeners, exactly what the differences are between the two. The first is that a LLC and a corporation, if you follow the law, they both provide protection against your personal assets being attached to a judgment in case you're sued. Right? So the number one reason why anyone should incorporate, besides saving taxes, is to protect their personal assets. So if someone is a sole proprietor and someone's a corporation, the sole proprietor gets sued, they're going to get sued for their house, their cars, their bank accounts, the 401ks, all of the personal assets are up for grabs. When a corporation gets sued, the judgment can only go after the corporate assets and not the individual's personal assets. That's huge. And both LLCs and corporations provide that limited liability protection. That's why it's called a limited liability protection, because if you don't follow the law, then you don't have any protection there at all. So follow the law and you'll get that protection for your personal assets. Corporations have been around for hundreds of years, right? It's a known entity. It's known internationally. It's a vehicle to do business through. LLCs were recently meaning the 70s, I'm going to say, they arose during the 70s, and it was only for one reason and one reason only, and that was just to hold real property. They were not created to run businesses through. Over time, an LLC has become a hybrid of holding real property and actually doing business through. So it's become a hybrid where individuals will incorporate as an LLC and they would run their business as an LLC. Now, some of the I guess the cons, right, of having an entity, a registered entity. Well, for both of them, corporations and LLCs, you do have state filing fees that you have to pay to the state in order for your business to stay in good standing. If your business is not in good standing and you get sued, you're going to get sued personally. So that's one of the laws that the state requires you to do, is make sure that your company is in good standing with the state wherever you've incorporated. And obviously a con would be, the state filing fees. And you have to do this every year with the state in order for you to maintain your corporate status. Now, as far as people using LLCs, misconception, well, my friend is a business owner and they have an LLC, right? Or my neighbor has been in business for 15 years and he has an LLC. LLCs are not right for everyone. LLC is fantastic for an individual who wants to start running a consulting firm all by themselves. They're not going to take any investment money. They're not going to hire any employees, and they are just themselves running the business, and this is what they want to do. In that type of scenario, Joe, an LLC is perfect. It's fantastic, right? One of the pros of having an LLC is that you don't have to, there's not that much paperwork to do as there is with a corporation, right? That's one of the pros of an LLC. Now, a corporation, if anyone is going to be hiring employees, or if they want to bring in some investment money from private equity people or private investors, investors are not going to invest in an LLC. They don't feel comfortable. It's taxed differently. They don't feel that they have the flexibility. So that's why a corporation is a fantastic vehicle for anyone that is looking to expand their business, hire employees, even incentivize some executives, because with a corporation, you can issue stock, right? But that stock can be vesting over time, which is obviously incentive for people to stick around for the long haul. And one con of a corporation is, yes, you do have to take that extra step and you do have to do your annual minute. Annual minutes are a bare minimum. The law says you have to treat your corporation as if it's completely separate from yourself. And how do you do that? So, well, they're saying that you have to elect the board every year, just in your minutes. And then the board elects the officers every year, again, in the minutes. That's the bare minimum that a corporation has to do to stay compliant with the law, is to have the annual minutes. They can obviously have monthly minutes as well. Everything that they meet on, or if it's just you, for right now, and you are a corporation and you're the board and you have to meet on or decide a situation, write it down. Met on so and so day, discussed so and so and agreed to so and so, and write it down and sign it, because that is going to be proof that you're actually treating your company as if it's separate from you personally.
When you were talking about LLC and the corporation on the hiring employees, so what is a way that an LLC could contract and hire employees versus a corporation? Can you expand on that?
Yes. So there's two ways that a LLC would be taxed, right? One is just as a partnership, which is you don't treat it, or you don't elect to be treated as an S corp for tax purposes only. Right now, we're just talking about tax purposes. With an LLC, you're usually taxed as a partnership if you don't make that election, and then you're actually paying 15 or 16% in self-employment tax right off the top. You're not, again, as a LLC, you're not paying your share into Social Security, Medicare, Medi-Cal, disability.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are going to hire an employee, yes, you can put them, do it through payroll, but that employee, you can't really give them incentives to grow with the company, because with an LLC, this is another huge con with an LLC, is that in an LLC, we're talking about units, which equal stock in a corporation, shares, right? So it's terminology. LLC, you use units. You are not allowed to reserve units in an LLC. All of those have to be issued. So when you have a corporation and you want to hire an executive and you want to incentivize them to stick around for 3, 4, 5 years, you give them vesting shares, stock that vests over time. So at the end of 1 year, this person's going to stick around to get that percentage of shares, and then maybe the 3 or 4 years this person's going to obviously stick around to get the remainder of the shares. That's vesting. With an LLC, again, you're not allowed to reserve any of the units. They all have to be issued at the same time. And usually the owner of the LLC will remain a majority owner. But every single time a new person comes in and somebody wants to be part of the LLC ownership, the original owner of the LLC will have to give some of his or her shares out of her share or his share to the new person. Sometimes that in itself can be a tax triggering event as well. You don't have any of this stuff with a corporation, because corporations are allowed to have reserves, have reserve stock. Okay.
So I guess what I'm hearing is, with a corporation and with LLC, there is flexibilities and restrictions on each. So going back to what you were saying earlier, that each it will work differently based on the intentions of the business owners, on what they want to do, how much they want to expand, where the trajectory of their business, where they want to go.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So it's it's kind of like taking a road trip and deciding which way to go, and see, right? Which one has more curvy or ups and downs or whatever, how much you want to go on that. So besides, some of my clients do love the LLCs, and some other ones that they love the corporations, but it's interesting to see how you, from the legal perspective, see the behind the scenes of how these things work. And really quick question on the corporation. So when someone incorporates and they want to issue shares, could you give us how does that work? Is that, I know there is restrictions, so how does that work? What is the process? So let's say if I'm a business owner, I started my corporation and I'm bringing 3 or 4 people to the corporation, I'm going to issue some shares. What is the process to do that legally?
Okay. It all depends on the reason why you're bringing in these people, right? I'll give you 2 scenarios.
Okay.
So with a corporation, I'm not really good at math at all, Joe. That's why I went into law, right? So I'm going to keep the numbers really, really basic. Say we have 10 shares, right? The company in its entirety has 10 shares. And you're the owner, so you'll get a percentage, and then you want to bring in four more people. So there's going to be five of you altogether, right? So as you, the owner, you'll get a majority share. And then the other ones will get maybe a share each. So now you've just issued 4 shares plus yourself. Let's give you 2, right? So 5, 6. You hold the majority. You have 6 shares, and they all have 1 each. If the people that you're bringing in are actually investing in the company, they are buying that 1 share from you. Therefore, you immediately issue that share, obviously through the right agreements and paperwork that are SEC compliant.
And that was when I wanted to bring my point across, because when someone incorporates, they may get that binder with all this stuff in it, but when it comes to issuing the shares, the federal entities come involved with that. So something that the business owners need to know, that even though you have a very small company, you're tapping into federal law that needs to be followed. So, right?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, Joe. So if I quickly finish that other example, if you're bringing in the 4 people to work for you, but you want to, they have something valuable that they can provide the company and help grow the company as well. That's when you want to give them vesting shares, which means it will vest over time. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, they get a percentage of that 1 share that you gave them. Right? That way, they'll stick around and they want to grow with the company. Now, issuing stock, it falls under the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission. That is a branch of the government. They oversee any types of securities. Shares, stock in a company, it falls under the definition of security. So therefore, they are in charge of that aspect. Now, if you don't have the proper exemption, let me put it exemption. So when anyone issues stock, before the exemptions, it was basically like going through a mini IPO. It's very expensive. You have to, any company, I'm going to start off with this, any company, any size company, it could be an individual, it can be 50, it can be 5,000, any size company, whenever they are issuing stock, they have to register with the SEC. Again, that's very expensive to do that. It can range in the $40, $50, $60,000. That's just for one registration because you want to issue stock. Well, obviously the SEC said, this is not right for the small business owner who can't afford that. The one person that's sitting there, maybe they want to issue some stock to the investors, or they want to issue some stock to executives that they're bringing on. It's very unfair for someone to come up with that much amount of money. So the SEC said, will allow you to issue stock without registering with us. However, you have to fall under an exemption. There are multiple exemptions. There are 2 acts for the SEC. There's a Securities and Exchange Act for private companies and one for public companies. And it is probably this thick, each of them. And I know that you or your listeners don't want to read any of that, right? That's why you hire someone like me. So when you are issuing stock, you can't just write out the stock certificate and say, here you go, Joe, now you own a percentage of my company. What about that? That actually is a criminal offense. You could go to jail for that, right? People don't know this. And why would they? Like you said, why would they know this? Then they've never been to law school. They've never been sued, right? The other way you'd find out is if you were sued in that particular situation. So you have to make sure that the proper documentation is drafted and signed, and proper authorities being given by the shareholders and the board of the company. And then you make that exchange. Once the documents are signed, then you can give the stock certificate out to whomever you're issuing stock. But it's not as simple as just writing a stock certificate and giving that out to someone.
Okay. And that's a really good answer to that question, because I mean, small companies who are setting up their corporations, whether in California, Delaware, or whatever, and I know for a fact that none of them has read those big exceptions. But so, is there a shortcut that you could suggest? Not a shortcut, but a way that for them to do it, or for businesses to do it in the easiest way possible. What would that be?
That would be the easiest way possible, is to make sure that you actually have the proper documentation drafted. It
Okay.
does take an attorney that has securities experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there's a lot of case law on this. There are a lot of statutes governing this. It truly is taken as a very serious act when anyone issues stock in their private company. Public
Okay.
companies, they obviously have to follow a different set of laws, but for private companies, again, you can't just say, here you go, we're going to write this on one piece of paper and you sign this and here's your stock certificate. If you don't fall under the right exemption, because there's probably 10 to 15 different exemptions that you can fall under, if not
Mm-hmm.
30. So if you don't actually pick the right exemption that applies to you, again, you're committing an illegal act, which you
Right.
can be held responsible for. It's
Okay.
pretty serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our listeners can basically connect with you, or an attorney, to make sure that they do have an exemption. So when they issue that, there is a process to go through, because a company that has, that starts a business, maybe they want to do, I don't know, market design or consulting. They want to set up as a corporation. I know they don't have the ability or the knowledge. Like, again, like I said at the beginning, we don't know what we don't know, and having the ability to have access to the resources into the information to make the right decisions is critical. So
Absolutely.
I thank you very much for that. So I know we run out of time on this segment, but I really, and I think this is an important segment. And would you like to continue a second the second part of this segment on our next section? Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So I think this is very important, because this is the beginning. It's like a foundation in a house. If the foundation is not solid, doesn't matter how pretty the house is, it's going to fall. So I think having the foundation from the beginning set up correctly is critical.
It's
So,
huge. Absolutely.
okay. Well, so we're going to do this, our session 1 or segment 1 out of 2, and then we'll come back, and I'm sure we're going to have some more questions from our listeners as they start posting questions throughout the week or throughout the month. And then we'll come back next on the next session and do the part 2, and kind of give us your expertise on how to do this correctly, and what it will take. So, but I know that you also have one of the resources I really want to bring to light is, I know you just completed a book, right?
Yes, Joe. Yeah,
And
very proud of it.
I'm sure, and I know what it takes to do that, and I'm very proud of you too. So could you have, okay, yeah, excellent.
I have it right there.
Yeah,
Right there,
Go
Joe.
Legal Yourself, Kelly Bagla.
Yes.
So they can basically read this, get the initial information, and then from there send the questions to us or contact you directly, and kind of get the setup of the company correctly. Is that
Absolutely.
available on Amazon, or where is it available?
Available on Amazon, Books a Million, wherever you can purchase a book, you can get this from there. My publisher down here, Wiley, you can go directly to wiley.com and purchase it. And
Okay.
this book is actually special because it's like a Christmas gift that keeps on giving, Joe. When someone purchases this, it comes with a code. And that code, you can actually get additional resources that cost at least $1,000, right? But it's completely free because you just purchased the book. You get a
Okay.
free business template, a business plan template.
Oh,
That in
okay.
itself is just $500.
Absolutely.
Plus, exactly. Plus, you get lists of necessary contracts, right? And it's a fantastic book. It really breaks down the how to start a business, how to grow a business, and what are the legalities you have to watch out for. Because again, business owners, they don't go to law school, they're not lawyers, right?
Right.
And they can't just keep a lawyer on speed dial unless you have thousands of dollars. So go legal yourself. The second edition is the next best thing.
Okay, when and that's true, and I think we are in the age of information, and anything, but information can be cluttering, can be confusing. So having a resource that you can actually access. I love the idea of the templates. I mean, templates maximizes time like crazy. I love that. So thank you very much, Kelly, for sharing that. And on the as we post the video, we'll post the link for people to go and look at your book and access it that way.
Fantastic. Yes.
But
Thank you, Joe.
no, of course, my pleasure. And so I will see you next month to do the second segment of this part. And
Fantastic.
I thank you very much for your time, Kelly. And awesome to have you again next month.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.